Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We weren't supposed to do a show today, but things got rearranged because the weather in the Northeast is not cooperating with myself and Russ when it comes to baseball. I was supposed to traditionally I go to the Buffalo Bison's opening day and it was on Tuesday. They got rained out. Then they had a doubleheader on Wednesday. That got rained out, and it rained all night. So, they had a 6-game series against, who was it? Can't remember who. Against Worcester, and the whole series might get rained out because it just won't stop raining. And Russ, the Mets opening day got rained out. So you're here.
I'll be there tomorrow. So let's talk about Craig Carton and his sources. Like, we all have sources, all of us. And once in a while, I'll evoke it and post something on Twitter. And I know that my source is going to be 99% correct. But the other day, Craig Carton works with WFAN. He posted that there's another team in on Aaron Rodgers. And then he lets it slide, I guess, that it's the 49ers.
Yeah. And
there's no credence to it. Like, nobody can corroborate it. Nobody can do anything with it. And then even his own partner, there's a video clip where his partner is kind of guessing that the Packers may have used him, like somebody from the Packers organization may have fed him that information. We don't even know if that's true. But my basic point here is, if you're going to float something out there in the New York area about Aaron Rodgers and the biggest sport on the planet, you better be right, because otherwise it's going to fall down on you. And right now it's falling down on him.
Well, Kev, I don't listen. I used to listen religiously to WFAN during the Mike and the Mad Dog days, but I no longer. And them hiring Carton was basically my excuse to go someplace else, because he was in Buffalo. He's sort of like the shock jock of
He's
sports.
Been everywhere. He's in Philly.
I just don't like his style. And I've always, questioned the quality and veracity of him as a sports talk show host. So I heard secondhand the stuff on another New York radio show about his rumor about Rodgers and San Francisco, and it's completely been refuted every place else. So the anatomy of a rumor and how it gets around is always interesting, but when it's based on nothing, it's just chatter. It's just talk.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I remember a conversation several years ago with Bob McKenzie, and I were sitting around after a game, and we were talking about trade rumors, and he was just shaking his head to the proliferation that it's occurred probably in the last 15 years. And he goes, most of the 97% of the rumors that occur, never come to pass. Either they weren't good rumors to begin with, or they simply didn't pan out. Like, it's one thing for two teams to talk. There's always a lot of talk and a lot of chatter. So is it possible that the 49ers inquired about Rodgers? Maybe, maybe not. But, they might have made a call, but, if it may have stopped right there, right after it happened. So,
and the other reason he's getting a lot of blowback is apparently he called Adam Schefter, who's like the number one guy in the field, a mouthpiece for like the NFL and such. So I guess, that's something else, where he called him a mouthpiece for even Aaron Rodgers. So
when you work for ESPN, and I'm not casting aspersions on it, but ESPN carries the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball. You're going to have commentators on there who get fed information from ESPN through the leagues, through ESPN, and they're the guys. I'm sure that Wojnarowski, Adrian Wojnarowski, does similar things in terms of getting sources from the NBA, from particular teams, and putting it out there. That they're a conduit. It's like I don't understand that criticism.
Yeah, no, nor do I. Were you done with that, Russ? Or
yeah, I'm done with it.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment to this week is the Masters, and I'm always reminded of how old I'm getting just when you hear these little things in sports. And today, Tiger Woods teed off at number 1, and he won his first Masters before one of the guys he's playing with was even born. Like, that's hard to believe to me. I mean, Tiger Woods does not feel old to me. He still feels like he's in middle age of his career, but he's not. He's near the end of it. He's not all that far away from qualifying for the senior tour.
Right.
So But it is amazing, and I find it just so fascinating that my major interest in the Masters is still what's Tiger going to do in it. I only saw.
Not alone.
Yeah, no, I tuned in this morning to see his first shot. He has trouble on that first hole. He's played that. He's minus 100 in his career at the Masters, and he's plus 18 on the first hole. So if you tune in, and you see the first hole, you always kind of get a good sense of where Tiger's at in his game. And he parred it. He played it conservatively. He's usually, and there's no rhyme or reason for what happens on one. He usually goes left or he goes right. He's only hit the fairway less than 50% of the time in his career. But this time he hit a fairway wood, hit it down the middle, actually outdrove the two younger guys he played with, put it up on the green, knocked it within 4 foot, got a par, and said, "That's all I wanted. Just give me a par and get out of here." You only got to play it 3 more times.
Yeah, I think it was 97 when he won his first one. So so that would make that's 26 years ago. Everybody watches Tiger. There's a dedicated group that is rooting for Tiger and a dedicated group that wants Tiger to fail. I love Mickelson. I've always been a big fan of Mickelson, and I know that there's a special dynamic with the Masters this year because I'm pretty sure that the live golfers who won the Masters or that they're still playing, and it'll be interesting to see if one of them is in contention, whether they'll get the same kind of coverage that somebody like Dustin Johnson is a live golfer and McIlroy is not. So if they're in the final pairing, whether they'll show McIlroy as much as Johnson or vice versa, that will be interesting to watch. But all I know is this, Kev. It's going to be Easter Sunday, and my brother will the family is getting together for Easter Sunday dinner. He will be putting pressure on my niece to put the Masters on TV because he'll want to watch it.
Yeah. I mean, it's at our holiday gatherings, we always put sports on. Nobody's offended if we want to.
Yeah, we do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not that big a deal.
It's listen, if you're coming over for Thanksgiving and you don't expect to see football, don't come over.
Yeah, but when you have a 4-year-old in the house, they want to watch SpongeBob SquarePants. So.
Yeah, I don't know who's in charge of kids in your house, but in our house, the adults are in charge.
Well, it's not my house.
Pretty standard parenting in the Allen family.
It's not my house because if it was the hockey game or golf would be on.
Yes, and as Michael Cohen points out, I'm a huge golfer. Yeah, yes, that's entirely true.
My wife and I ran a sports league for many, many years, and we were always disappointed that there were always more boys signed up than girls. And so we always would quiz the parents saying, why isn't your 4-year-old daughter signed up for soccer? We had 8 boys teams and only 4 girls teams. And she'd say she didn't want to play. And, my wife would say, in my house, I pretty much tell my kids what they're playing,
right.
And that's the way it is, especially at 4. They don't even know what
it's fun or not. Yeah.
Yeah. They've never played it before. So just sign them up. And, my wife would always tell kids is, when you're 9, you make your own decisions. Before then, I make your decisions. So worked out fine. My kids all took dance and piano and played in sports. And, some of them, they all did different sports in high school, but they tried them all. That's for sure.
All right, let's get started here. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, April 6th, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. I'm going to start with a trivia question here, and then I want to get into Tampa Bay and the Rangers because that was a really interesting game with ramifications going forward for the playoffs. I just popped up on Reddit, and I saw this, and I thought this would be an interesting little trivia question. They list the 10 players, or actually 11 players, with the worst. These are active players with the worst plus minus for their careers. So active player, which active player has the worst plus minus of any player in the NHL actively currently?
Boy, I have 2 choices.
I'll give you.
I got one too. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Kev. You first.
I'm just going to say Seth Jones because he's played with some bad teams, but that's just a guess.
Russ?
I'm torn between Tony DeAngelo and Shane Gostisbehere, so I'm going to go Tony DeAngelo.
Okay, none of them are on the list.
Wow.
But
one minus his most year. There was 1 year DeAngelo was a plus for the Rangers, but that was 1 year.
Yeah. I mean, Seth Jones is minus 73 in the last 2 years with the Blackhawks, but before that, he was pretty much a plus player. But Russ, you were right in one respect. It was two players who played for the team that you cover the most.
Oh, the Flyers. Or the Rangers. It's probably the Flyers, but so I guess it's Van Riemsdyk.
Nope, it's a defenseman. And he played most of his career with a team that has
Ristolainen.
Rasmus Ristolainen. Minus 175.
Well, that's good. You got to work at that. Like that,
yeah.
You don't come by that by accident. You got to work.
Angelo's only a minus 16, so he has gotten better in recent years.
I'll ask you to predict one more, then I'll give the rest of the list, and then we'll move on. The number 2 is a forward, which is an accomplishment because usually defensemen are on the ice more often.
There's a minus 61, so he's in there.
Yeah,
in there.
This forward has won 2 Stanley Cups. And has a rather unique record in terms of longevity in the NHL. He has played for Boston, Toronto, Pittsburgh, Arizona, and Vegas.
Because that changed it now.
Phil Kessel?
Phil Kessel. Phil Kessel is minus 156.
Wow.
Yeah.
Again, I repeat, you got to work at that. Like
that's hard.
Yeah. You can't, you don't come by that by accident.
And the thing is that usually players who score as often as Kessel has are plus players. But in Toronto, he was minus 34 his final year. And in Arizona, in 3 years, he was minus 62. So, he piled up the years with the Leafs when they were missing the playoffs. You were going to be a negative because you were on the ice so much and they were behind and you needed to score. But yeah, on this list, Sam Gagner is minus 137.
Oh, I found the high one.
Okay.
Erik Karlsson.
He's not on the list.
He's minus 92.
Yep, he must be just on the outside here. Kyle Oposo minus 136, Jack Johnson minus 134, Jeff Skinner minus 132, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. The rest are okay. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Damon Severson, which is
Severson's surprising. Ekman-Larsson's not.
Jeff Petrie, Eric Gabranson, and Andreas Athanasiou. So they're all over minus 100 or higher. Interesting. Okay. So Russ, I watched intently the Tampa Bay Rangers game last night. It was on TNT. So and it was one of 3 games, but that was the one. It was not the one with the most consequence. That was Calgary, Winnipeg. But this game, I mean, Patrick Kane didn't play, and Jacob Trouba got hurt early, and I didn't see what happened, so you have to tell us what the update is. But this was a really physical game against 2 teams that have a hate-on for each other because they played each other in the Eastern Conference Final, and the Rangers ended up winning 6-3. But the physicality of that game was something that it was very playoff-like. There was definitely some ill feelings there, and I think it's a preview of what we're going to see from Tampa and from the Rangers in the playoffs.
Yeah, no question. It was Corey Perry that got Trouba. There was all kinds of hits. I mean, Braden Schneider laid a big hit on Paul. So that was he just crushed him. This was a game that wasn't for the faint of heart, but it also had a lot of skill. It had everything. It had toughness. It had dirty play. It had good goalie play. I mean, Vasilevsky wasn't like at the top of his game, obviously, but he did make some big saves. But it shows the weaknesses in Tampa's defense. And so, this is a game where, Kev, I told Mike, I said, the Leafs can't play like this. So if they play either one of those two teams and that's what the series turns into, they're in trouble. But I don't know if Tampa can go far in the playoffs playing like this either, because that's the thing. They've got guys on their defense that just aren't great. And
when you're playing Darren Radish.
Yeah, Darren Radish is a big guy. He's been on a lot of teams. It's Taylor's older brother.
Right.
These are guys that, they're going to have to do what Chicago did and just roll with that top four and run them into the ground. But I don't know how far they can go with that.
Well, go ahead, Kev.
Well, I was just going to say that I think the reason why they made the trade with Nashville and brought in another physical player is I think they have an understanding that they're not the same team they were.
Right.
And they're going to try to skin the cat a different way. And I think it's pretty clear they're going to try to bang people around. But I'm totally with Russ on this. I don't know they can sustain all that. And I think their deficiencies are serious enough that, you still got to defend.
You do.
And they've been good at that. And they're less good at that now. So all the hitting in the world isn't going to change the fact that Vasilevsky is going to be under siege, particularly by the Maple Leafs, who have the kind of offensive ability. So, I think it's almost going to be like an unknown frontier for Tampa Bay. We've not seen them quite like this before,
right,
where they're struggling defensively. They still have the exceptional goaltending. They've got a lot of talent up front, but, they've never had to play like this. So it's really sort of unclear of how they'll do. But, I don't think they're one of the top two favorites like they've been in the past. That's for sure.
No, I've had Leaf fans sort of push back on some of the things that I've said on the Buzzcast or on Off the Post or the Leafs Convo, any of the podcasts that I do, or even in my columns about, Tampa Bay and, Tampa Bay is vulnerable. Okay. They're more vulnerable than they were last year. No doubt. I'm not denying that. And I look at their defense and, you've got a top four of Sergachev, Cernak, Hedman, and Cole. Now, Cole, I think, is better suited as a 5-6. Then you've got Darren Radish and Nick Perbix. Okay, that's a vulnerability because they're going to have to ride four defensemen. And if you're a team that like Boston or the Rangers, you can wear down those four physically and force them to make mistakes. My assertion is that Toronto has very few players that can lay a hit on Hedman and wear Hedman down when he's going to play 30 minutes a night, probably in a playoff scenario or close to it, and make him make mistakes. He's one of the best defensemen in the league. He's a big physical presence. Sergachev is good. Cernak is good. So, yes, there's a vulnerability, but a team has to be able to take advantage of that. And Russ, you were saying the Rangers were going to the front of the net.
Starting to heat up. He has 35 goals, which I said coming off of his, what was it, 52 last year. I said if he gets 35, 40, that's what you want. And he's getting that. More of them at even strength, by the way, because last year he had 26 power play goals. This year only 8.
Yeah.
So he's getting them more at even strength. He is going near the net. That's a good thing. And I got to tell you again, Tyler Mott is like their John Madden. He really is. He had another goal last night. He was on fire last night.
And he laid out Jeannot. That was a phenomenal hit. But
guy too.
Yeah, no, and see, that's the thing. The Rangers, Tampa Bay initiated the physicality. It was going to get physical one way or the other. But the Rangers had answers. Schneider and Mott and Keandre Miller. They have big physical guys who can respond. The Leafs have a few of them. Achari is somebody who initiates contact. Luke Shen will be in the lineup in the playoffs. He's a big physical guy, leads the NHL in hits. But I don't know whether the Leafs can punish Tampa Bay's defense, and I don't know if they have guys who will go to the front of the net other than Michael Bunting and Chari. They really don't have guys that go to the front of the net and distract, and that's where Toronto, if they're going to be successful against Tampa, they're going to have to use different methods to be able to.
Trocheck punched Perry in the face in a fight, and I don't think I've ever seen Trocheck fight.
Oh yeah. Corey Perry brings that out in people.
He does.
Yeah, and Matthews is a big guy. Like, he can take that. I remember during the glory years, the Red Wings, Ken Holland would often talk about, it's two kinds of toughness. There's the ability to dish it out and to play gritty and be hard to play against. And then there are guys that just know how to take it and are just, not bothered by all that. And the Red Wings were that team in the 1990s. Like, They didn't care if you played physical. They could take it. So they weren't really bothered by it. So, the Maple Leafs going to have to be there. But I think here's the bottom line in all your discussions about, like, the Maple Leafs are going to be favored in this series. There's no doubt about it. Now, could Tampa Bay defeat them? Yeah, it's possible. But I think the probability is that the Maple Leafs will win. And I think that's probably the objection you're
getting. You can't say that to Mike, Kev.
I know. I mean, but
I can accept it from Kevin because there's no Eck curse, because Kevin is thinking about it logically. Eck just says it to piss me off, to predict the Leafs because he wants the Leafs to lose. We know that.
Yeah, no, and I think we all in ourselves have this, like I talked yesterday about, I don't believe in jinxes, but but I'm cursed when it comes to my fantasy baseball team and injuries. It's silly, and Mike has seen a lot of failures by the Maple Leafs, and he kind of has that adolescent belief that if you say that now's the time, it'll never happen. So
it's not adolescent if it happens.
So,
here's a great post from Thomas Boyle. The Islanders play Tampa tonight at UBS. If the Islanders lose tonight with Elliott in goal, Lambert should be fired on the spot.
Well, I mean, the Islanders got to win this game. So this is a very important game, and I've defended their scoring. I've defended it in terms of, I think, lately they've done okay. They're not the Maple Leafs.
Tampa's not putting in Vasilevsky. Like, Elliott's going to stay in that game regardless.
Yeah. So
back-to-back games, with the magic number is 2 right now for Tampa. So they're not there unless it's a complete collapse. They're not finishing any higher than 3rd. So they're going to play Elliott in back-to-back.
Well, it is interesting, and I know we're going to talk about them, and maybe I'll just wait then, because I wanted to talk about the Flames' decision to play Markstrom back-to-back as well, and I'm sure that was shocking to Russ because he's not a big fan of Markstrom. But anyway,
he did okay last night. I watched that game too.
Yeah, are we done with the Rangers, or we got more to say?
The only thing I want to ask Russ, and then we'll move to that game is true. How serious was the injury? Okay. Yeah. Continue.
It's not serious, and Kane was just sitting out because he's banged up and old.
Well, the reason I want to talk about Calgary and Winnipeg, and it was a 3-1 Flames win. If you didn't see it on NHL Network,
I did,
and it tied the playoff wild card race. Same number of points. I believe it's 89. 89 points. However, when it was over, and there was amazing elation from the Flames over this, Mangiapane just said, we needed this game badly, and they were just thrilled by it. And Daryl Sutter had interesting comment, I thought, and I'm totally amused by it. And I even told Mike it was a Jello-esque because it addressed games in hand, which is second only to injuries for Mike. Like Mike.
That's true. No, that's a fact.
Games in hand, Mike just thinks are everything. Anyway, and I wasn't too bothered by that, but it was the second point that I'm with Mike and Sutter on this, and that is what he said was we're not in it yet because they got a game in hand and they have the tiebreaker. Right. And he said, look, I get it's an important game because if we didn't win this game, we were in bad shape, but we're not in it yet because basically they got the tiebreaker and they got a game in hand. I'm less worried about the game in hand, but the tiebreaker is an important factor because essentially it is they still have a 1-point lead. Because if a tie is no good to them, if they both finish where they are now, the Winnipeg Jets get in because they have the tiebreaker. So
yeah, I would think what I felt, Kev, was that they were very fortunate, Calgary, because those penalties could have killed them if Winnipeg's power play was anything. Like there was a 4-minute double minor right out of the gate. Then there was another penalty a couple minutes later. Like that could have been disastrous if Winnipeg was anything with their power play. Now, I'll give Calgary's penalty kill credit. They definitely were good, but man, Winnipeg had to cash in on that.
Yeah, the noted analytics person, Daryl Sutter, is right in this respect. Money Puck has Winnipeg's percentage for playoffs at 62% and Calgary's at 31.8, and they're tied. So the game in hand, and
it isn't the game in hand; it's the tie.
It's the regulation wins. They're 33-30. Regulation overtime, it's even worse. So it's like, they have to finish a point ahead. They definitely.
I thought about this morning when I was doing this. When you talk to a player about games in hand, they always say the same thing. Well, you got to win those games. That's what a player says. You got to win them before we'll count them as being successful. And if you talk to management, they view it almost formulaic. Like, again, I've talked about this before. They know that, that you average 1 point, whatever it is, 2 or 3 per game. So if there's 4 games in hand, they see it as, well, that's like a 2.4 point advantage. And, they don't get too caught up in it, but that's kind of in their head. They sort of think, oh, we're behind, but it's just a couple of points. The way Mike views them is a game in hand is a victory. So if you have 5 games in hand, they're 10 points.
It's the only place where I have optimism. Except for when it came to the Islanders, because they had like 12 games in hand and they were 25 points behind, and I'm like, they're not making that up. And it was not because of the games in hand; it was because the team was not playing well. So
the Islanders had 5 games in hand, and you had played 5 games more, and you just said their lead was going to dissipate but it never happened.
I want to point out something here. It's unrelated to hockey, but it's interesting. So the Mets GM Billy Epler and Mr. and Mrs. Met were at the NASDAQ today, and it's still not raining. If it doesn't thunderstorm soon, this is going to be talked about for a very long time, that they canceled an opening day, and we haven't seen a raindrop yet. And I'm an hour and a half, 2 hours away, but still no rain yet. It's supposed to happen maybe at 2:00. If it doesn't happen, and they were goofing around at NASDAQ,
are they announcing Mr. and Mrs. Met's honeymoon or something like that, Russ?
No, they've been married for a while, Mike. This is his second wife.
I didn't know Mr. Met had been married before.
Well, it's unclear. So maybe you're from a different generation, Kev, so you maybe can figure this one out. There was Mr. Met and there was Lady Met that was on the early pennants. Now, was Lady Met just his woman on the side? And that's what, they were like, I don't know.
To use the expression from Goodfellas, it was his kuma.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we need to know, really. So
right
now, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, New York is always a little different. I mean, the Yankees had the wife swapping,
right?
So
yes, and Lady Met had an affair with Gritty. So right now in the West, as we were talking, Winnipeg and Calgary tied at 89, Seattle at 94. So with Calgary with 4 games remaining, Winnipeg with 5 games remaining, Calgary with 3 games remaining, Winnipeg with 4 games remaining, Seattle with 5 games remaining. In a sense of they're up 5 points, and they.
I got to stop you. I don't want to ruin the momentum, but on Wikipedia, it said that Mrs. Met previously referred to as Lady Met, but the problem is, if you look at this Mrs. Met, she doesn't have a gray hair, and she's obviously 20 years younger than him.
So she had a facelift, a few other things.
I don't know. It's very fishy. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Or did he just make an honest woman of her? So.
Yeah, but this can't be the same woman. It's not. Yeah. If you look at the banner and you look at this one, it's not the same woman.
Yeah.
So it's okay. I'm not touching that one. Okay, interesting thing, and they were talking about this on the Rangers Tampa game last night about how Vasilevsky is now he's focused, he's in playoff mode with about a week and a half to go, and we were talking on this show about 3 or 4 weeks ago how he just didn't look right and the team didn't look right, and they're still not winning as much as we're normally used to Tampa Bay winning, but Vasilevsky seems on. And Kevin, it's like I've discussed this before, but I think, can a player of a certain level just turn it on at that particular time? It's like, I mean, Patrick Kane, I was talking with Russ about Patrick Kane, and, he turned it on for like 3 or 4 games before the trade deadline and showed everybody that he was still Patrick Kane. And now he gets traded to the Rangers, and Russ is, basically insinuating that he's playing at half speed and he's got some injuries. But I think that when Patrick Kane in game 1 of the playoffs against New Jersey, it's going to be the Patrick Kane we saw score a hat trick against Toronto, and not the guy who's lollygagging around.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's a great question, because I think it's a different question than asking whether a team can turn it off.
Right.
And I do think players do get excited. I've never believed in the salary drive per se. I often felt that was kind of more of momentum. They get off to a good start and go on. And that's what I usually feel. But I do think players can rise up. We see it in injuries all the time. They're hurt, they play through it, they get excited, and they sort of ignore the pain. And then after about 5 or 6 games of that, the reality sets in and they start to feel the pain. Right. And then it gets a little worse. So I think for a short period of time, I think players can sort of rise up and play through anything, but I don't know that they can do it for an extended deal. If they're struggling and, if you're a step slow and all that, I think, sooner or later it's going to catch up with you.
Yeah.
I think, like, Russ, if you remember Dallas in that 2020 run in the bubble, Ben and Sagan and a couple other of their key players played through like horrific injuries. Like, I mean, I know Sagan, I think he had to have hip surgery, labrum surgery. He was out for like the first half of the next year. And Ben, it took him a year to recover. Now he's back to where we normally expect Jamie Benn to play. But it's like, yeah, they can fight through those injuries, but you will feel the effects further on.
True. No question about it.
But even in everyday, injuries are different now when you're under medical supervision. Like this is an example, but I was at the local grocery store and I ran into a teacher from the high school where my kids went to school, and I knew him because he was involved in the athletic programs and such. And we were talking, and he was saying he was going in for knee surgery.
Yeah.
And he was having a knee replacement. And I said, wow. And I know he was a workout guy. I said, boy, that must have really curtailed your workout regimen. He goes, oh no, I walked about 5 miles yesterday. And I thought, well, why are you getting your knee replaced if you can still walk 5 miles? Right. I didn't ask him that, but I thought that. But I thought about it, and I thought, that's the way of the medical world. No matter how bad of an injury you have, with medical help, right, you can exist. That doesn't mean he didn't have any pain. It just means he just kind of worked through it. So, maybe
some of the stories that we hear in the play, what was it? The one year that Patrice Bergeron was playing in the playoffs with a punctured lung.
Yeah.
I don't know if that, if they would allow that to happen. I mean, I definitely know that if Bob Baun was playing, he played on a broken leg and scored an overtime winner in 64 for the Leafs over the Red Wings, that probably he wouldn't be allowed to step on the ice with a broken leg. So, I mean, or Willis.
Say that.
Willis. Do you really think that Willis Reed would be allowed in the 2023 NBA season? Because Russ, they're worth too much money. Their salaries are.
I still think they're done paying them in the playoffs, and they want them to win championships too. If a player's going to be willing to do it, they're going to let him do it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit with Russ, but I'm mostly with Mike on this. I think they're a lot more careful with athletes now because, you hear the phrase all the time of, we don't want any long-term damage. We're going to be cautious here. So I think they're being a lot more careful, although, I think guys still try to do more than they should, and we do know, and this has been a problem for the league and the Players Association, is that when it comes to concussion, players have their own attitudes about those. They hate, they do not want people telling them how to play through concussions. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah, that's definite. I mean, we've seen
Now,
that.
Tonight there's a ton of games on the schedule. Obviously, the one I'll be focusing.
We should mention the Frozen Fours tonight.
Oh no, I was going to get to that, Bruce. I was just
okay.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to talk about the one question that I had that what we was Boston Toronto is the game I'll be focusing on, and Boston obviously is locked up the President's Trophy, and you would think they're obviously the favorite right now with this record-breaking season. But Kev, if you look at the record of President's Trophy winning teams in terms of that translating to playoff success, Tampa won the President's Trophy the year they got swept by Columbus. The Sabres won the President's Trophy. I think it was 06 or 07, and they lost to Ottawa in the conference final. It doesn't really translate in terms of like they're going to win the Stanley Cup because obviously the regular season and the playoffs are two completely different things. Now, I think Boston is the favorite to come out of the East because they've just been lights out, but it's not a guarantee based on what they've done in the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, they call it the second season for a reason, and regular season success does not always dictate playoff success. And I've always felt like, and again, this speaks to the idea of if you're playing well at the end of the regular season, or if you're playing poorly, does it impact? I don't think it does, but what I think does impact it more than anything else is what happens in the first couple of games. And I thought, for example, let's go back to that Tampa and Columbus. What happened in that? The Blue Jackets were very difficult to play against.
Yes.
And I think Tampa got into that and said, we won 62 games, but nobody played against us like this. Like, this is hard, and this is going to be hard. And I think there was a waning of the confidence there. They weren't sure. There was self-doubt. And suddenly Columbus had all the momentum, and boom, it was gone. That has happened. That happened to the Red Wings as well when they had an unbelievable season. We've seen it happen to other teams. So I think what's more important than what you do in the regular season is, kind of what happens in those first couple of games when everyone's sort of feeling out how this playoffs is going to go. So as long as Boston goes in and nothing happens in the first couple of games of that to plant any doubt, I think they're going to be the same team. But, who knows? We've seen momentum teams before go all the way to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that 94 year when San Jose beat the Red Wings. I think they were President's Trophy winning team that year, and San Jose was a dramatic underdog. But Russ, I mean, and I brought this up before with Boston. We see this battle, this three-way battle for the wild card, and the second wild card is going to play the Bruins. And I mean, Pittsburgh, we know they have championship pedigree with Crosby and Malkin, but the goaltending is questionable. Florida is a pretty good team, but defensively there's question marks. And in the Islanders, I think their goaltending is great and their defense is good, but their offense isn't. So you're not going to get a full package in terms of a team playing against Boston, but you do have teams that are capable of beating them if everything goes right. Yeah,
no question. I mean, but you've got to get past their defense. You've got to hope that Olmark's not right. You got to hope that, the Bergeron line isn't hot. Pasternak's not scoring. They're not great on the power play. Like there's five, they got 5 or 6 ways they could really kill you.
Right.
And to see it all be shut down would be very hard to imagine. I think the only thing that could shut them down would be like the left wing lock, because I remember just, going into that series, you looked at the Flyers and you said, okay, everything's rolling for them offensively. Even Hextall was good in net. Everything was going good. And that left wing lock just sucked the life out of them. And that's probably what you have to do to the Bruins.
Yeah, ironically, the team that I think is likely to miss the playoffs still, which is the Islanders, if they made it, would have the best chance to beat the Bruins because of Sorokin. If you have a hot goaltender and you're used to playing tight defensively, which they are, and they do because they have to, they have a chance against the Bruins. But and they have the physicality. They have a
chance if the score is kept low. Like the Bruins can score shorthanded goals. I think it's unfair to just dismiss Ullmark compared to Sorokin, because right now Ullmark's probably going to win the Vezina. Does he have to prove something in the playoffs? Sure. But I don't think it's fair to just say that yet. And, again, even the Islanders on the puck moving side of their defense is nothing like the Bruins. Nothing.
Well, okay, let me ask this question, then we'll go to the Frozen Four here and a couple other things. Of those three potential matchups for the Bruins, which is the one that is most entertaining, or the one that you most want to see? If it's me, I would say it's Pittsburgh, simply because it's Crosby and Malkin and all.
Me too. Me
yeah,
too.
I would say that too.
Yeah, it's best for the league too. Yeah, you want Crosby and Malkin at least to be there around.
Yeah. Okay. Kev, there was a serious injury with Marco Kasper, and yeah, wow, just.
Yeah, it really came out of nowhere. Apparently, he played on it in the game. He didn't think much of it. Lower body, didn't say what it was. Nobody really saw how it happened or anything else. The coach said he played 2.5. And even in Montreal, he said he woke up and he was kind of sore. When they got him back and they did some testing, the injury was a little more serious. Not a long-term thing, but he is now shut down for the season. So he got one game. In that one game, what the Red Wings saw is that he's hard to play against. Even at he'll be 19 on Saturday. They're hoping he's got more offense to him, but we didn't really see that, obviously. But he's so young; it's so hard to know. But the prevailing wisdom is that he'll have some kind of shot, similar to what the Red Wings have given, Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond, and both of them made the team. So who knows? I mean, he could, but he also could end up in Grand Rapids. But he's a pretty hard-nosed center, and they're disappointed that they didn't get to watch him a few games here.
The one thing I would mention about this, and it depends on the severity of the kneecap, but that's a tough injury because that one, I've heard other players who have had them, and it's affected them throughout their career, even after getting it repaired. So you kind of wonder the severity of how badly was it broken, because that does matter. And we'll see, I guess.
You must know more about that than I do. What is the injury?
The report came out it was a broken kneecap, that he was out 6 weeks.
Huh.
And I think it'll be more than 6 weeks. Like a broken kneecap takes a lot of rehab. It does.
Yeah. Did that come out today?
It just came out.
Yeah, I was going to say because I haven't seen that. So,
but
that's one of those tricky kind of injuries that we'll see when he's rehabbed, like what his speed is at and stuff. It could affect him a little bit.
Yeah, but the optimistic thing here is at the end of the season, it's not like he's going to be rushing back to get back in the lineup. They can take it slow, and
he's got a long off season ahead of him now.
Right, exactly. So I think that's, in a sense, that's a good thing. Now the Frozen Four, as Rusty mentioned, the semifinals tonight, the finals on Saturday. First game, Quinnipiac and Michigan. Other game.
No, that's the second game.
Oh no, that was the first game I wanted to bring up.
Sorry,
I didn't know the order of how they're played, but
yeah.
Quinnipiac and Michigan and Boston U and Minnesota. But let's talk about Quinnipiac and Michigan first.
Well, the funny thing is like Quinnipiac has some really good players in Sam Lipkin, and there's 3 or 4 really good players I like. They have some seniors. Ethan DeHong is a guy that really nobody has mentioned, who's having a really good year for them as well. They're definitely teams looking at some of their players, but I think the X factor here is the coach, Rand Pecknell. I've covered the ECAC for a lot of years. I've seen him in action. He's got a tremendous winning record. He's built that program from nothing, and Michigan has a rookie coach. And Penn State gave Michigan all they could handle last game. Like, I was at that game live, and it was tremendous the way Fantilli scored and tied it, and the way Samoskevich won it. But Penn State was right in there and gave them all they could handle. And I'm just thinking Quinnipiac's going to look at that tape, and they're going to play it a similar way. And they do have speed, and they're pretty good defensively. So I wouldn't assume that that's going to be a walkover. I actually picked Quinnipiac because I'm just going to do it on the strength of the coach here, because sometimes that does matter in college hockey.
And Boston U and Minnesota. Minnesota is the top-ranked team. I know that they lost to Michigan in the Big Ten. Yeah. But they've been phenomenal all year, loaded with that line. Snuggerud, Cooley, and Matthew Nyes. Nyes and Cooley are both on the final listing for the Hobey Baker, along with Fantilli of Michigan. So what do you expect out of this matchup?
I think Minnesota will win. I mean, look, BU's got a good team. Devin Kaplan's done some nice things with them, a Flyers draft pick. This is a a year that BU has bounced back, so that's nice because the program was a little bit down for a little while after Quinn left. But right now, it's going to be a good game. I really, the way I look at it is you can't put Minnesota on the power play. Like basically, Logan Cooley is probably the second best player. Fantilli's probably the best right now in this tournament, but Cooley's the second best. And Cooley can kill you in a lot of different ways. And that power play is just deadly. And that's why I said Jackson Nelson, the minute this tournament ends, we'll probably have 6 or 7 teams lined up to try and sign him because he plays the bumper on that power play. And Nyes is on it. And so you put that team on the power play, you're going to lose. And so that's what I think will end up happening.
And I know from the Toronto perspective, they're Matthew Nyes, if they go to the finals, that's on the 8th. The Leafs will probably sign him immediately after the game or the following day, and he'll probably get into an NHL game. I wonder if that's going to happen with Cooley, if Cooley's going to turn pro right away, Russ, or if
I think he will. My assumption is he will. I don't know that for sure. And just so it's out there, I'm pretty sure Fantilli will go back.
Yeah, didn't you say he's got a brother who's going?
He's got a brother there. He rooms with him, so I'm pretty sure he's gearing up for another year. Yeah. No matter who drafts him, and no matter how much they sweet talk him. But again, because that was just one of the things he had told me when I interviewed him, is like he had his path figured out, and so far everything has worked perfectly. So I can't imagine they're going to mess with it now.
And last thing, the Tempe situation continues to just decompensate, Russ. I mean, Craig Morgan came out with this morning regarding what we've discussed on the show about, the airport and how that was going to complicate the development in Tempe and the vote. I mean, it just seems to be falling apart with it's a month before the vote, correct?
I mean, the Coyotes did have a little get together to try and sway public opinion. And I don't know if it's going to be enough because, again, at the end of the day, I don't want a plane flying over my house. And that's what's going to happen to some people who, would be in these, and I think they're like townhouses or something. And so I feel like this is going to fall flat for them. And I feel like it might even be dead on arrival based on this lawsuit.
Kev, I'm a little desensitized to planes flying over my house because I live a mile from the Buffalo airport and the takeoff path is right over my house. So I'm used to it. Yeah. But, for a community like Tempe and Scottsdale, I'm sure, and the property values there, I'm sure they don't want 757s flying over their roof for all hours of the day. So, I mean, this could be something that kills it. But I asked the question.
One thing I would caution too. I see Shane Doan has done a video for Arizona, and what he has said on the video is, together we can turn a hazardous landfill into a permanent home for the Coyotes. And again, the problem with the hazardous landfill is, from what I understand of the deal, the city has to pick up the cost on that, not the Coyotes. And you don't know what that's going to cost until you start digging around in there and seeing what you have to clean up. So I think that's another part of the deal that's a little on shaky ground.
It could be like Love Canal in the Buffalo area where there's dioxin and things of that. You don't know what's there. So. But Kev, it's like, I mean, again, this is a moving target. If the vote fails, like from my perspective, it's done. They should move, but they're probably not going to. They're going to look for plan X or plan Y.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that I know for a lot of people, I still think they think the best deal would be somehow working out something with the Suns, but we'll see. Sooner or later, if it doesn't work out, they're going to have to move. So
maybe this lawsuit is more than I thought. It's for $2.3 billion. Well, the Coyotes filed a counter lawsuit for $2.3 billion. So that's their response.
Maybe that meeting that Gary Bettman had with the owner. The owner of the Utah Jazz, maybe that's the off ramp. Never know. There has to be a scenario here where they're just running out of options in Arizona, and they have to find a place for this team. But who knows? We don't know. We'll
right now, it's a fight, and it's just I can't imagine that it's going to be an easy thing to pass when people see this kind of fight escalating. So, but like Kevin said, it's like whack-a-mole. They'll end up somewhere.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, great show, guys. We are probably not going to do a show tomorrow, so we'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. Happy Easter, happy Passover to everybody. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.